he's being manipulated by the foundations. They decide policy. The president doesn't. The Congress doesn't. Nobody in the government really makes any decisions. And if you look at Congress now, they're paralyzed. I talked to Bob Barr privately a couple of years ago, and I asked him, I said, when they stole all these FBI files, is that what's keeping Congress under control? He said, absolutely. He said, they have dirt on everybody. They know what everybody's done, and they're all terrified to resist in any way.
And that's what the surveillance state's about. Okay, ma'am, look, it's way past that. Okay, it's way past that. Was that Jen or Sherry I just went to? Okay, I'm sorry. I was calling Jen Sherry. Now we go to Sherry. I apologize, Sherry. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex. Hi, Dr. Blaylock.
Hi.
I have a question for you, Doctor. Is there any legitimate medical reason why 67% of children in foster care would be on those drugs? Would there be any reason besides total control?
The federal government says it's for eugenics, but I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Blaylock.
Now, on drugs for what?
67%, a national average, of foster children are on SSRIs.
Oh, yeah, and, if you look in the physician's desk reference, it says that children shouldn't be on SSRI, that they induce psychosis, they induce a higher incidence of suicide, homicidal thought patterns, so they know that. The SSRI is a very bad medication, and if the FDA was real, if it was really a regulatory agency, it would have been removed long ago.
And, Doctor, as you know, in the trials of the first big one by Eli Lilly in the early 1980s of the SSRI Prozac, they admitted internally that it caused massive increases in psychopathic breaks, homicide, suicide, but they went ahead and approved it.
The girl hung herself, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you see, this is what I talk about in the film Nutrition and Behavior, is that most of the things we see in children that have to do with abnormal behavior are due to a poor diet and toxin exposure. And that if you change that, most of these children undergo a radical improvement in their behavior.
Really?
And by the way, let me stop you. Even mainline studies that you see in the press occasionally admit that getting them off dyes, getting them off processed sugars, getting them exercise has massive, better numbers than Prozac, which they even show is detrimental. Go ahead.
Well, all this is in the mainline peer-reviewed journals. It's not, from something in alternative medicine. This is in mainline medicine.
Did you see the latest?
The fact that most physicians don't read this.
Did you see the latest?
They don't read the research journals. They're not even aware of this.
Did you see the latest number from 2008 that 100 million prescriptions for SSRIs in 2008 in the U.S.?
Oh, absolutely. And when Bush had the program where it was going to have all the children examined psychologically and have them placed on medication if they needed it.
New freedom.
This is absurd. That's not the function of the federal government, to have people psychologically evaluated and placed on medication.
But that's
something as dangerous as SSRI medication.
But that's what the eugenicist Aldous Huxley, whose brother later ran the UN, Julian Huxley, who became the head of the Eugenist Society and the head of the Transhumanist, he said they would drug the public. That's where THX 1138 and Brave New World come from, because that was the plan, and now they've got 100 million people on them.
Sure. I mean, in the book Brave New World, they talked about the drug Soma, and that you would calm people down, and then you'd have another drug to excite them when you wanted them excited, and when you wanted them apathetic, you put them back on the Soma again.
And now they even have an SSRI on the market, Doctor, called Soma.
Absolutely. And his book, Brave New World Revisited, goes into the nonfiction description of all of these things.
Hold on, Doctor. We're going to skip this break for PrisonPlanet.tv viewers. Stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. Infowars.com.
Have you ever thought about what's in your
I'm going to skip this
shampoo?
break, Network. Okay, thank you. Anything else you wanted to add, Sherry in Texas, to Dr. Blaylock?
No, that was it. That pretty much answered my question for me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Robert in California. Robert, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Dr. Blaylock. I have a question regarding vaccines. What would you recommend to people who've already taken vaccines, like natural chelation, natural therapy, something along those lines?
Well, if you've taken vaccines that have mercury, I would recommend being tested for mercury.
Right. How about people who can't really afford seeing a doctor or?
Well, the hair testing for most people would be sufficient.
Isn't it very inexpensive comparatively?
It's very inexpensive, and you don't need a doctor's permission to do it. So you can get your hair tested for mercury levels.
So if he does have higher mercury, what does he do?
Well, a lot of things neutralize mercury toxicity in the brain because it's very difficult, and some people think impossible, to remove mercury from the brain once it's in the ionic form. Selenium neutralizes mercury toxicity. Quercetin helps neutralize it. Many of the flavonoids, like curcumin, all of these things are available now as supplements.
Right. How about hormones? I know you take several hormones. How about those with like low thyroids? What would you recommend?
Well, if you have low thyroid, of course you need supplementation to bring it back up to normal.
Right.
But removing at DMSA, you can use it as a very slow removal over a long period of time. Alpha lipoic acid helps remove mercury from the brain. So does magnesium. Increases mercury removal from the brain. And one of the safest and easiest to do is aged garlic extract, which over a long period of time removes it.
How about liquid zeolites?
Well, I've talked to Boyd Haley. He thinks that's a lot of baloney, but he says it's too large a molecule to get into.
Yeah, look, we're out of time. We're out of time. I appreciate your call, Robert. We're about to come back to the full audience, and I want to plug your website again, Dr. Blaylock. We're just for the internet only right now. I was in a restaurant the other night. I whipped in to get something to eat alone. There were 3 different groups of people sitting around me. One group was talking about, they were not that old of women, middle-aged, talking about all their health problems. And one group, 2 other groups, were talking about how they all had thyroid problems. So what is going on with thyroid, and what's causing that?
Well, one of the biggest offenders is fluoride. They used to use fluoride a long time ago to treat hyperthyroidism. Well, of all their glands in the body, the thyroid accumulates the highest concentration of fluoride. It's much higher than any other organ. So it is that it's in the water and you're drinking it every day. You're accumulating a huge amount of fluoride in the thyroid.
We're going back to the full audience. Full audience. Here we go. Man, this show has gone by really fast. I've got to have the doctor back up for another hour and a half, 2 hours in the near future. This radio transmission's almost over, and I want to go to Brad and somebody calling themselves Dr. Tracy. Well, I guess they're a doctor of some type. But briefly, Dr. Blaylock, fire out your website again for folks to get books and videos on these subjects.
All right, it's russellblaylockmd.com, RussellBlaylockMD.com, and you can get to the books and free information and DVD, newsletter through that. And also some of the papers I've published, I put on there that you can directly download.
Okay, Doctor, we're going to come right back to you in 1 minute, and I think take a final call from Dr. Tracy because I want to hear what they have to say. But before I do that, remember that this hour was brought to you by MySolarBackup.com. We couldn't do it without these sponsors. These are great folks from our good friends at Solutions for Science with a great catalog of products. But this is an 1,800 watt power source, power plant, and high-efficiency solar panel designed to provide endless electricity. That's right, it generates free electricity. MySolarBackup.com. Give them a call at 877-327-0365. Again, MySolarBackup.com or 877-327-0365. And I believe in getting off the grid, or at least being self-sufficient, being on the grid, but also being able to go off the grid. This is a good way to start. MySolarBackup.com or 877-327-0365. And again, sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Blaylock, but that is how we fund this whole operation. That's why I hope people go to your website as well and support you. And we're going to put that up on prisonplanet.tv screen before this hour ends. Before I say go to this final call, I just want to thank you, sir, for everything you're doing. And if it wasn't for people like you getting the truth out, who've been inside the system, we would be in a lot worse straits right now. Do you agree with that?
Well, yes, and I thank you for all your valuable work. You do a tremendous amount, and you know a lot, so it's valuable information.
Well, I mean, I'm not even that smart of a person, but how would knowing that there's this evil elite doing this, how would I not want to know all about it? I mean, how would you not want to know? That's what I can't believe about the public. I mean, this is real what we're talking about. I mean, even if people are doubting us, if there's a 1% chance we're telling the truth, don't they want to know?
Well, the interesting thing is all they have to do is use their media and say, well, everybody who thinks there's a conspiracy is a nut. And that way they won't even look into it. And you can say, well, read this book,